I think online, not to toot my own horn, but I believe that I'm one of the first channels that had legitimate disappointment with Tears of the Kingdom very early on, right? Whereas I realize now videos of disappointment about the Zelda game is trending at the moment, right? But with most of my disappointments, I felt like DLC would be the thing that just completely medicates all the disappointment. As in, they can tie up all the loose ends with DLC. But then imagine my disappointment when Nintendo announced that they wouldn't even bother to do DLC for Tears of the Kingdom. I just found that to be very, almost arrogant. It leads off of how I felt after Tears of the Kingdom. With all of my investment into the game and the franchise, it just feels like Nintendo just doesn't care about the story, doesn't care about the nature of a sequel, right? And I just think that perhaps Nintendo, i.e. the Zelda team, have been used to just creating non or loosely attached Zelda franchises or Zelda games, right? And it's a shame. Tears of the Kingdom has so many plot holes that will never be fixed, you know, that will always be there. And it's almost at a point where I can't really go back to the game because I don't see how I can enjoy it in its current state. But nevertheless, these are things that I would have liked to see in a DLC and things that I think would have changed everything. Everyone who is disappointed about Tears of the Kingdom, I believe these 10 things would have helped Tears of the Kingdom and would have made it have much more appeal than it currently has. The first area they could have added is to close the story with regards to the divine beasts. So again, this is an area that a lot of people are frustrated with because there was no suggestion of where the divine beasts went. And obviously the divine beasts at this point, during the end of Breath of the Wild, were like landmarks, right? They were right there. You can see them in the landscape, you know, particularly Var Meadow before it was perched. It was right there in the air, right? So to have these mammoth creations just disappear without anyone saying a thing, even though the characters in Tears of the Kingdom were around in Breath of the Wild, that's just frustrating. So they could have given us a simple story. Okay, we had to rebury the divine beasts since they serve their function. You know, they are pretty dangerous, right? Because they're massive weapons, right? So it's understandable. We need to put them under the sea or contain them in some way. You know, something, right? This is the purpose of the DLC, to close the story in this area. And second up, along the lines of the first one, is the Sheikah shrines. Where did they go? Over 100 Sheikah shrines that, you know, some people have said that perhaps the shrines were just a figment of Link's imagination. But actually there are many side characters that noticed the shrines, right? So they're obviously visible landmarks. Where are they? Did they just retract underground? Right? They could have tied it in nicely with the depths as well. Perhaps somehow all of the divine beast stuff fell into the depths. All of the Sheikah shrines went into the depths. There is enough room there, right? Third will be Cass. Where is Cass? Why not tell us where that famous bard went? You know, again, another loose end, which is annoying because we have created this relationship with this key character who featured in Breath of the Wild's DLC, but we get nothing. We know nothing about this very key character. And the thing is if Nintendo are leaving this current Breath of the Wild universe alone, and we can only imagine that the next Zelda game will be on a new system, the new Nintendo system, which can only mean that it's going to be an entirely new, quote-unquote, timeline, a new Zelda universe, right? So Cass will be a character who we will never have any closure about. Then we've got the whole lore about Rauru. You know, the zonai popped out of nowhere, absolutely nowhere. We always knew Rauru to be this old, sagely, Hylian type of guy, right? As we thought of him during Ocarina of Time. But now they've completely changed the story, the lore, and introduced these sky beings, you know, potentially aliens. who have hijacked the lore that we've all known for many, many decades. Right? So if they somehow, in some intelligent way, could have tied Rauru Zonai with the Rauru Hylian, you know, somehow, some way. I know a lot of it is implied that all the, you know, the current royal family are descendants of the Zonai. But if that is true, why don't the royal family look any different from the normal Hylians? You know, why are there no visible traits of the Zonai in someone like Zelda or the King? Number 5, an explanation telling us why there were no Sky Islands in Breath of the Wild. You know, this again could be a simple explanation, such as the sky barrier that was featured in Skyward Sword. You know, you can just say this, there was a sky barrier, it didn't open up, it was sealed by divine intervention. You know, and in Breath of the Wild, if you look closely, when the dragons depart from the world, they often go through a portal in the clouds, right? But again, with no explanation, and with no explanation about the light dragon as well, it's a bit annoying, to say the least, right? And it makes Tears of the Kingdom just seem like like it doesn't make sense, or it was like an afterthought. And I'm starting to think that maybe it was an afterthought, or maybe at least the pandemic reset some development and they changed strat in some areas. Because I actually believe that Link was the one who's supposed to go back in time, and if Link did that, the whole Tears of the Kingdom game would be a completely new, right? We'll be in a primordial Hyrule. We will meet the original sages. We will meet the first king and the first queen, which will be very, very, very touching, right? The DLC at number 6 could have also allowed us to have a sage face reveal. You know, speaking about the original sages, they all wear masks, right? And that just makes it even less so personable with any connection to them. They all wear masks. We don't know their identity. They're just basically generic Zelda race characters, right? When usually in most Zelda games, these individuals were characters, like prominent characters that we knew very well. You know, think of Majora's Mask. We got Darmani, Mikau, and we've got Lulu. We've got the old Goron. We've got the Deku Scrub and the Butler. You know, the original sages should have a face reveal from the DLC. Number 7, Ancient Hero. You got the Ancient Heroes aspect if you completed all the shrines in Tears of the Kingdom. A very strange being who is implied to be a Zonai, maybe even a Zonai and a Gerudo. But then they leave us hanging. No explanation, no backstory, just a few comments by the Sheikah, by Impa, but no real deep explanation, which again is annoying, and it's very, very cheap to throw that in and add nothing else to it. Okay, we all knew in that original tapestry that, yeah, that doesn't look like Link, he's got red hair, that might be Ganondorf, but hey, no explanation, right? Number 8, dronification. Namely, we got the 3 original dragons, Naedra, who else? Farosh, and Din Rao. Since we know about draconification, that almost certainly implies that the other dragons were people who ate their sacred stone or their secret stone. So the DLC could have easily fleshed out on this idea, right? Maybe there were the goddesses, or maybe there were other Zonai who went this route for whatever purpose, you know? Maybe it was setting up for a prequel game, perhaps. But they could have fleshed this out further, but they didn't. Number 9 would be a master mode, which is an obvious no-brainer, right? A master mode. With Breath of the Wild, a lot of the difficulty came in the form of the Guardians, especially early on in the game. They were very hard to beat and very daunting enemies. I can always remember my first playthrough in Breath of the Wild. I was very defensive, you know, often crouching a lot, sometimes disengaging with battle, right? Especially when you're on the 3 hearts at the beginning. But the master mode is something that always kept me back in playing Breath of the Wild, right? Because I always wanted or appreciated that extra challenge. There's a part in the game, usually just over halfway, where you're just so powered up fighting just feels too easy, right? So I think Master Mode, especially thinking about the depth, would have just made Tears of the Kingdom, DLC much more rewarding. Especially also the main bosses, because they were slightly on the easier side. Especially thinking of Kogera, which has great theming, great music, but easy, right? Master Mode would have done all of those things justice. And at number 10, I was hoping that the DLC would reveal more about the zonai. When you think about it, we've only were introduced to 2 zonai. Rauru the king and his sister. I was at least expecting, somewhere in the sky, a whole tribe, or a lost civilization of zonai people. I don't understand why, for example, why is there no story about before they became extinct or before they became only Rauru and Minoru? What happened to them? What is the lore behind that? Again, these are things that we as the fans can't just patch up together. There is a structure that Nintendo needs to create for us to run wild with our imagination. At this point, it's just completely broken. Complete plot holes. Like, for example, we had that quest in Tears of the Kingdom where if you landed on those flower-shaped sky islands, you get a little bit of lore about individual characters from the past. They could have used a system like that to give bits and pieces of information about the Zonai too. Right? Not just simply about Rauru, Sonya, well, she's not Zonai, but, as a queen, and Minoru. They could have fleshed out on the whole the whole Zonai civilization. But those are my 10 things that I would have loved to have seen in Tears of the Kingdom DLC. Again, I think it's a wasted opportunity. On the one hand, I understand it. It's time for a fresh start. But on the other hand, there were so many loose ends in Tears of the Kingdom that it's almost disrespectful. And to be real, it has now hindered my luster to go out and buy the next Zelda like I would normally do. To buy all the limited edition hardware, controllers, and stuff like that. I'm losing the luster to do that because it feels like Nintendo just don't care. But those are my 10. What things would you have liked to have seen in the Tears of the Kingdom DLC? Or do you think it was the right move to move away from Tears of the Kingdom and let it be what it is? Let us know in the comments below. And do check out these other videos that might also pique your interest too. But for now, it's Normie out. Normie!